Megan, we are so excited to have you here today. And Joe, we talk about this quite a bit when we have like finance experts on here, um, because everybody has a different approach. I feel like, which is for somebody that's not in that realm. I'm like, how does everybody have a different approach? But they're also fascinating, and so I'm so excited to hear your take on all the questions we have today. But before we dive in, we now have our icebreaker question, and you chose our favorite of the two, which we're so happy about. And that is, what is the wildest thing that's happened to you as a solopreneur?
Okay, so and I guess I don't know exactly what wildest would entail, but for me, this was a pretty transformative or pivotal moment in my journey. And it was really when I first started my business. I had one of my first clients. I had no idea what to charge at that time. Like I was like totally winging it and undercharging him. And let me tell you, when you talk about like going above and beyond or scope creep or whatever, like I did that for this client. And I think what was wild to me was that despite all of that, he ended up like at the end of our engagement, he still owed me money. I never got paid for that. He like, kind of like treated me like I was like beneath him almost as well. And it was just like coming into like being a business owner at the time too, like I didn't have like super great self-esteem. I would say I was really young. I was in my early 20s when I started my business. And so like for me, it was wild because it was just like a different perspective into how people are, but then also like how I needed to show up differently as a business owner. So like it actually helped boost my confidence a little bit. I realized that I needed to do more research, like find out what people do pay for these kind of services and just like really step into being more of an expertise. Like it didn't happen overnight, but like it started me on that journey. So like I'm thankful for it because I think if it would have just been like all sunshine and rainbows, like first starting out, like I wouldn't have learned that very important lesson in the journey. And I've been a business owner now for, over 11 years. So I think like it was foundational in my story and in my journey to of business ownership. So for me, that was wild.
I think what you said is just so relatable to so many solopreneurs. The amount of times that Joe and I talk about, like, just raise your prices because they'll say they're working around the clock, and it's like, well, have you asked for a little boost?
Right.
As well, I think it's something that, I mean, if you set your prices perfectly at the beginning, get a hold of us, send us an email, and tell us what you did and how you figured that out because
Yeah.
I think it's very rare for somebody to
Mhm.
set it correctly at
Yeah.
the beginning. But speaking at the beginning, and you were saying that was so foundational for your business. Let's start with the basics of this conversation. So what for a solopreneur listening, whether they are just starting out or are kind of reassessing their business that they've had for a while, what would you say are the top bookkeeping systems that every solopreneur would need to stay organized to run their business successfully?
Yeah. And I know a lot of people like gravitate toward spreadsheets, which isn't necessarily bad, but I just feel like it's not as robust as what you need for for having a business and really stepping into CEO. So the three tools that I would or systems that I would recommend is some kind of an accounting software. And there are free options out there. Wave Apps is one that's a pretty decent accounting software and it's free. So definitely something like that. QuickBooks Online has different tiers. There's also like Zoho Books, Zero, some kind of accounting software though will help you to get into the habit of treating your business like a business and your numbers like a business, but also help keep things organized. Another thing that I would definitely recommend is some kind of mileage tracker, receipt tracker, kind of software or system, because those are going to be two of the big things that you need to have in place, whether you're a solopreneur or you're a larger business. You need to have some kind of system in place for your documentation. And mileage tracking is a big deduction for a lot of businesses, especially solopreneurs, where you want to make sure you're tracking that and in the habit of it so that you can deduct those kind of expenses. And then my third one would be Profit First, which is a cash flow management system. And it really we'll talk a little bit more about it later. But it's a cash flow management system that you put in place of your business, and it really helps to prioritize the things in business that most people overlook or have pain points with, which are things like taxes, saving for taxes, paying yourself, and then strategically reinvesting into your business. So it really helps to put those things into perspective and prioritize it right from the get. And that's really helpful to put systems like that in place in the beginning, or even like, like you said, if you're reassessing, in the long run, those are really, really important for the success of your business.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm excited to learn about that. I've been kind of a lunatic about cash flow in past businesses, so I'm really
Yeah.
curious to see what you'll come up with.
Yeah.
Well, and so just from a daily, like day-to-day standpoint, how can business owners use their financial statements to make smarter decisions?
So the thing I always like to tell people is that your decisions about your business go back to your numbers, whether you know them or not. So knowing your numbers, leaning into your numbers, looking at like your profit and loss, especially, is going to be really important to helping you figure out how your decisions affect your money and making sure that you're on the right track. Looking at your profit margins, understanding what your net profit is, your real profit is, to make sure that what you're doing is actually making money versus like you having to, if you're operating at a loss, the only thing that's going to help subsidize that, or like keep you going, is if you go into debt. Like you're going to have to borrow from something or somebody if your business isn't supporting itself. So having an understanding of your financial reports, leaning into those, is going to help you make better decisions as a business owner. You can, make sure every expense has a purpose or an explanation, is what I always like to tell our clients that we work with. Like, you need to know where your money's going, and you need to be making sure that it's in alignment with where you're trying to go with your business.
I just think that's so important because I think a lot of solopreneurs are like, "Oh, I'm just not gonna look at it this month. I don't see," and they go into denial, and then or not denial, but just like kind of out of sight, out of mind. Ignorance is
Exactly.
like 100% as I can right now. Um,
Mhm.
but it's so important to just keep it top of mind. So I'm glad that that's something that you advise your clients all the time. But for solopreneurs, a lot of times they go into their businesses and they're not tax professionals. They're not bookkeeping professionals or anything. They're marketers or they're life coaches or like whatever.
Right.
And so finances can be really overwhelming. So what's that first step that you think that they should take to gain control?
Really, I think it just comes down to like doing your bookkeeping. I know when you wear lots of hats, especially as a solopreneur, you're wearing all the hats basically, right? You might have a couple contractors that you're working with, but for the most part, you're wearing all the hats. So it can be really easy, like you said, to kind of put it off, kind of not look at it, put it in the back burner. But if you want to be an owner of your business and not just an employee, which is possible even as a solopreneur, you got to start by setting time aside on your calendar to tackle your bookkeeping and review your reports. So just starting there, to get that system in place, making it a consistent practice. So I know a lot of like our clients have time weekly where they're working on their business, not just in it, but on it. Like bookkeeping falls on into that category of working on your business, because it really is the foundation for helping you be a better business owner.
Okay, so once the systems are in place, and you saw me do a really thing when you mentioned the T word taxes, um, I do not love. They're the necessary evil. I get it, but I just loathe them. So for solopreneurs like me, um, once the systems are in place, what are some tax strategies that every solopreneur should use to help them save money?
Yeah. Great question. And it can be a little bit complicated because some tax strategies are just kind of dependent on many different things. But the three most common things that most solopreneurs can do, or at least should look into, would be things like home office. Like I mentioned before, mileage is like usually a big one for people. And mileage can include, like, even if you're working at home, if you're running to the store to buy supplies, or, you're going to meet with a client, like that's mileage you can deduct. So keep that in mind. If you're running the post office, any of those kind of trips that are related to business, you can deduct as business mileage. So that's a big one. Another one that often gets overlooked is the self-employment health credit. So if you're, on marketplace insurance, or you're paying insurance privately through yourself instead of like through a spouse, you can deduct a credit for that amount. So that's something that gets overlooked a lot. when it comes to businesses and especially solopreneurs. And then I think too, I know this is the fourth one, but this one's like the most important in some ways. But it's really just having an understanding of what a business deduction actually is. And so a business deduction is anything that's ordinary and necessary to the operation or growth of your business. So just kind of thinking through it from that lens, and it's very broad. But what you have to think about is like, what are those things that you can deduct? Can I share a couple of examples just to kind of help people? Okay. So one of my favorite examples to use, and this is a real case that went through the IRS, is that there was this realtor that wrote off a yacht. And so, of course, when her taxes went through the IRS, they're like, whoa, 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 you can't write off a yacht for your business. And she had to go to the the court, to the IRS, before the IRS, and support her deduction. But her argument was that she was a realtor to properties where the people that wanted to buy these properties didn't want to see them from the front door. They wanted to see them from the water. And so she would take her clients on this yacht and show them these properties from the water. And she was able to win that argument because for her business and her type of clientele, that was an ordinary and necessary expense. Another one I like to use is, if you go to a conference and there's a Ritz-Carlton, but down the road there's a Hilton, you can't typically make an argument that you can stay at the Ritz-Carlton and write that off because there's a Hilton down, which is perfectly fine. So like staying at a Ritz-Carlton is above ordinary and necessary. So you got to kind of just think about it from that lens. Is like, if I were to go before somebody and have to defend my deduction, am I going to be able to make an explanation that supports this deduction? But if you can, and you can do that confidently, pretty much anything, you can fit into that category, you can write off. So just having that understanding can help people save a lot in taxes by just having that understanding of what a business deduction actually is.
Can I probe on that a little bit? That's interesting. I had not heard that one about the Ritz-Carlton versus the lower cost. So I mean, but at some point you need to then rent a car, because if the conference is at the Ritz-Carlton, now if I'm up the street far enough, I'm going to need to rent a car.
Sure.
Which may offset. So I mean, how does that work? I mean, in practice, thinking in terms of, obviously this is all got to do with IRS deciding to audit you,
right?
And then deciding that this is a hill to die on, so to speak, in terms of the audit. Can you just shed a little more light on that kind of thinking of, where, at what point do I have to consider the Motel 6 versus the Four Seasons?
Well, I mean, like I said, it's like ordinary and necessary. So like if you're staying at a hotel, or if like the conference is at this like fancier hotel, you can make the argument that staying at that hotel is ordinary and necessary because it's in the same building. When it comes to like renting cars, you can definitely rent a car, but you shouldn't pick the top tier car because you're probably going to have a hard time making that argument that it was necessary, right?
But I needed that Ferrari to get there in time.
Yeah. So like, there's like, and there are some limitations to that. Like clothing often comes up as like a question, like, oh, I have to buy this suit. Well, if you can wear that clothing, even if you are not a person who does dress like that, because that's often the argument is like, oh, well, I wouldn't normally wear this suit, but I bought it for work. But if you can wear it outside of work, it's typically not something you can deduct. If you have a logoed shirt, yeah, like you do, you can write that off, Now, you probably shouldn't get like a Gucci outfit or, something like that where it's going to be super expensive and get it logoed. You might not be able to make that argument, even if it's logo, that it was necessary. But like things like that, like you have to just kind of think through that lens. But most other like, general expenses, professional fees, are often something people miss too, because they don't realize that different types of insurances. So just kind of having that thought process and really sitting down and be like, okay, what are all the expenses? Does it fit into this lens of ordinary and necessary? And if it does, then usually it's something that you can write off. Of course, always consult with your accountant, but and tax preparer. But
have you ever been audited, Megan?
I have not, no, but I have clients.
It's so much fun.
Yeah, and it's
But I had tax professionals, so they kind of took the front
okay.
line on it. So
That's good.
it was less painful, but
Yeah.
documentation, all that stuff is so important.
Yes, it is. Yeah. And I always tell people like the more you have, the less they'll dig, generally speaking. Because if you have like, receipts and you can pull things, like they'll be like, okay, this person is. But if you like are struggling to get documentation, like they're gonna probably be have a little bit more scrutiny. So it's always good to have like systems in place for everything. Um, especially like receipt management and mileage tracking and that kind of thing. So
Well, Joe, you need to stop trying to expense your Gucci, and then you want to be
I guess, huh? I got
I
that logo on the Gucci on the Gucci suit, you know.
luckily, I'm not going to push for that. Beyond systems and taxes, you said something interesting earlier about like you can own your own company and still have like be an employee. But as a solopreneur, you really do want to take on that role of CEO. So, what are some CEO mindset shifts that can really transform a solopreneur from employee to owner?
yeah. Great question. And I know this is something that I've definitely had to develop for myself as well. So if you're just starting that journey, don't feel bad. It's mindset shifts can take a little bit of time to do. But I think for me, some of the things that I've had to go through and some of the things that we even often talk to our clients about is things like creating a vision. So not just winging it or just like going into your business and saying, okay, I'm going to see what happens, but like really having a purpose, understanding why you're doing what you're doing can be really helpful in just creating that like direction for all of your decisions. And that helps a lot too, and kind of brings me to my next one, which is to set like those boundaries for what is going to be helpful for your business to drive it forward, or things that drive it forward. Lining that up with your vision can be really helpful. And then also setting boundaries in terms of like what you're going to be providing and when that scope creep comes in. So just like kind of elevating your thought process of like, okay, my business is this entity and it's outside of myself. So then your business becomes like its own thing, So like when you make decisions, is it for my business? Am I moving in the direction of my business? Does this goal align or this expense align with what my business needs? Just kind of having that kind of establishment of like your business is outside of yourself and you're treating it that way can be really helpful. So like having organization is really important. Getting more legitimate is another thing. Like people will come to me and they'll be like, okay, I'm ready to be legitimate in my business. So like, do I need to be an LLC, or do I need, how do I start addressing the tax thing? How do I get my bookkeeping in place? So just like those kind of shifts as a individual help you to move from more of a CEO or more of an employee to more of a CEO, where your business is its own entity and you're making decisions towards that, but you have a direction to go in. And then you're not afraid to start making decisions that help your business and not just like let it kind of happen. Which is what I think a lot of solopreneurs, we kind of just like, we're in hustle mode instead of like being strategic, right? So that can help with that.
Question, Megan, do you use a statement of work with your clients? Do you have a statement of work, something that kind of outlines what you do and maybe what you don't do?
Yeah, we have different like contracts. I guess I don't call it necessarily a statement of work, but like we have contracts and packages. So like in each package, it has different things. But again, that was something I had to kind of learn too. Like even going back to that wild story, it was like I didn't have any differentiation between what I was providing versus what I wasn't. So getting really clear on like this service provides this, and then if I need to go outside of that, having a plan for like what needs to happen next. So like if a client needs something else, like what's the bridge to the next
You've got a package for that, so to speak. You can
exactly.
upsell them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We all learned that the hard way. So,
Yeah.
Well, so I feel like it's one thing to get the CEO mindset, but I think it's another thing to establish like a resilient mindset or resilience-based mindset, because as solopreneurs, growth isn't always smooth sailing. You have your ups and downs. So Can you discuss a few strategies that solopreneurs can use to overcome business, but as well as personal setbacks to keep them moving forward?
Yeah. Like you had mentioned, basically, like, and I know a lot of business owners that have been in business for like 5 or 10 years, and the common thread behind all of them is having that grit and that resilience. I think another big thing is understanding your why. Like, why are you doing what you're doing? What is the impact? What is the purpose? Because then. And I know for me, that's been true too. Like, there have been moments, in the 11 years I've been in business where it's like, should I keep doing this? It gets really hard. Things don't work out. You get, frustrated or disappointed, or things don't move as fast. And the thing that's helped keep me going is like, okay, well, like, I'm making an impact and people need this service in order for them to be successful. And they're able to then, if they're successful, then they're able to provide for their families and their communities and their futures. And like, for me, it's really a big passion of mine, because my business has been so instrumental in helping me care for my family and make some really hard decisions and get through some really tough seasons, because I had the flexibility and the ability to get what I needed out of my business at each of those times. And so people can do that for themselves too. So it's important.
Let's dive a little bit deeper into that. And because I think economic uncertainty is such a concern. I mean, for most people, whether or not you're a solopreneur, but solopreneurs as well. How can solopreneurs start becoming more recession proof? What can they start doing to just be prepared if that happens?
Yeah. Great question. So in my opinion, there's a couple of things that they can do. One is put together a budget. And I know it's kind of one of those icky things. Like, people hate the word budget a lot of times because it feels restrictive. But really, having a budget is actually having a plan for where your money's going to go. And then when you have a budget in place, you can review what's actually been happening compared to what your budget plan was. And that gives you the ability to start asking higher level questions of what happened. Why didn't this work out? Why didn't I hit this number? What did I do that made me hit this number or exceed that number? So like, you can start asking more of those questions if you have something established. And it's really, a budget is like your goals in number format. And that's what you want to put in place. So having a budget is going to be one simple thing you can do. Another thing is putting money aside for taxes. This is a big, big, big issue that businesses of all sizes, they miss this part. They do not save strategically for their taxes. So if you haven't been doing that, what I would recommend is saving about, anywhere between like 8 to 15% of your sales. So anytime sales comes in, put it in a different account specifically for taxes. Anytime you get sales that come in, and that will help you. That helps a lot. It helps you to have peace of mind, because taxes are usually overwhelming. And the reason why it's overwhelming is because there's usually a tax bill, especially if your business is doing well, you're making money. There's nothing wrong with that. We're going to have to pay taxes. Like you said, it's a necessary evil, but the key is not overpaying in taxes and not being unprepared for taxes. So being more prepared for it it gives people a whole other sense of just calm, I would say. And then stepping into like just understanding it more also helps with that as well. But those would be the two like simple things that you can start doing today, or working towards today, that will help with becoming a little bit more recession proof.
Nothing ruins your day like getting an unexpected tax bill, or
Yeah.
one that should have been expected, but you didn't expect because
But
you
you
weren't
wasn't.
paying attention. Yeah.
Yeah,
Ugh.
exactly.
And even
I-
when you're doing your quarterly payments, it's painful to be like, "Ugh, bye-bye. Like,
Yeah.
see you later."
Right.
But
But then you get it back sometimes, but you didn't get any interest on it.
Yeah.
it lessens the blow at the end of the year. Um, okay, so speaking of recession proof, you were talking way back in the beginning of the episode about profit first. That's Mike McAllowitz, right?
Yes.
Um,
Mhm.
about the 4 principles. What are those principles of profit first that can help with recession proofing?
Yeah. So Profit First, as I mentioned, is a cash flow management system that basically forces profitability. And the way that it is set up is that we use different bank accounts to act as different buckets for these things in business that often get overlooked or they're not prioritized, which are the saving for taxes, paying yourself, strategically reinvesting, and just helping to stabilize your cash flow throughout the year. And so we use these different buckets, and basically it's income that comes in, and then you split or you disperse by a percentage into each of these buckets a certain dollar amount. And you can have more than just the core like accounts that they are set up. A lot of times people, once they start utilizing the system, they actually get more empowered, and they were like, oh, well, I can save for this or I can save for that. We have a couple of clients that they have like product-based businesses, and every year, twice a year, there's like big sales on the products that they buy. And so one of the methods that you use with Profit First is like, instead of waiting until that month to like spend all this money, you're saving a little bit each month towards that amount that you need to have. And so it helps to stabilize your cash flow throughout the year. And it forces something that I like to call real profit, which is not a technical term. There's like gross profit and net profit, but it's real profit because if a truly successful business can pay you as the owner, which depending on how your business is structured is not an expense, right? It might be a distribution or a draw, but a real business will be able to support that. It will be able to support paying your tax liability, and it'll be able to support your next move, the level up that you want to do. Like we have another client who's right now, she's got a bucket that she's saving money towards opening up a second location, and so she's self-funding her next level. And that's the kind of principles behind that, and creating real profit is what helps your business be recession proof, because then you're planning for it. You can also start to see issues before they become issues, because if you don't have enough money in this one account to cover whatever the expenses, you can start addressing that a lot easier. So I really love Profit First because I feel like it helps bridge the gap between your reports, which are still really important, but it doesn't really give you a day-to-day grasp on what's happening in your finances. And Profit First kind of helps bridge that gap. So it makes money more tangible for business owners, and it helps them to see like where their money's going on a day-to-day basis.
Can I ask a little bit of a technical question on this?
Yeah.
Do you implement this in the context of the chart of accounts? Do you actually have accounts for this money being put aside, or is it kind of done off the books?
Well, so each of the buckets is a bank account. So they are on the chart of accounts as a bank account. And like the expenses are still the regular expenses that come out, or, it shows up wherever it goes. It's just the buckets are bank accounts. And that's because over 70% of business owners do what's called bank balance accounting, and they look at their bank account to see how much money they have. And so
they know which bank account to look at to know how much money they have.
This leans into that habit, which is what makes it usually very successful, is because we're not creating new ways of doing things. We're leaning into people's typical habits and how they manage their money and how they look at their money. And so it's a really great system for many, many people. And we take it a step further too. We help people implement the system, but then we also go into like business training. So helping people like understand the different profit points in their business, because it's more than just your expenses that affect profitability. It's the way you price, and the way you have your culture set up, and the way you have your packages set up, and all these other different elements of being a business. So that's a really cool part, of what we get to do with businesses.
Megan, I just love how you've broken all of this down. I feel like you simplified it for people who are kind of foreign to all these concepts, which we so appreciate. And I have no doubt you'll help people find success with this advice. So question for you, what is your favorite quote about success?
So it doesn't necessarily directly talk about success, but my absolute favorite quote is, if you don't know your numbers, you don't know your business. And that's by Marcus Lemonis, who has been like a mentor to me. He had a show on CNBC called The Profit. And I learned a lot of like key concepts from him, just like what a successful business actually looks like. And it's prioritizing your numbers, but not just your numbers. People and processes are also part of the success of business. So if you don't know your numbers, you don't know your business, and knowing your business is essential for being successful.
Perfect. Love it. Well, if people want to learn more about you, your business, where can they find you?
I am on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. I also have a Facebook group called Your Accounting Sidekick. So feel it's free, and I do lots of free trainings in there as well. But those would be the main places. Otherwise, my website, you can book a call with me right on there as well. And it has my contact information.
What's your website and what are your social handles?
So Megan Schwan is most of my like LinkedIn and Facebook. I think Sidekick Accounting is Instagram. And then my website is sidekick-accounting.com. And it's sidekick like a superhero.
Perfect. Well, we will include all of that in the show notes. But thank you so much for coming on today. This has been so great.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It was a fun conversation.
And listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. As always, we would love that 5-star review. Please share this episode with a friend who you think would find this super helpful, which I think is a lot of people out there. And subscribe on your favorite podcast platform, including YouTube. And we will see you next time on The Aspiring Solopreneur.